Okay, dear friends in Dhamma, we are going to start the next part of this mindfulness for young adult session. So that is actually a discussion on the book compiled by Most Venerable Katukurunde Jnananda Thero. That is the concept and reality in early Buddhist thought. And we were discussing some attributes about the dependency between consciousness and name and form, and then we went into another topic where how the unestablished consciousness then can happen. So this kind of some interesting area we are discussing part by part, and someone is ready to begin with where we have stopped. Probably someone, you may start with a little bit earlier than what we have stopped, so that we can understand or we can connect with where we have stopped.
Yeah, but we stopped at this page, page 79. So
Right.
do we start from the
Previous paragraph? Yeah.
From here, feeling, perception.
Fine.
Feeling, what is it, half of a paragraph? The above mentioned interdependence between Vijnana and Namarupa is a corollary of the mutual dependence between Nama and Rupa in their Buddhistic sense. Form, Rupa, can secure a basis in consciousness only in collaboration with name, Nama, and this is where the concept comes in. Though matter, in its gross conventional sense, cannot be completely transcended so long as one's physical body is there, name and form as the concept of matter can be dissolved or melted away through wisdom. As was done by the Buddha and Arahants, the concept is what it is due to some kind of crystallization or fabrication, and this is brought about by the fermenting agent, asavas, influxes, cankers, as they are called. The darkness of ignorance, avijja, is leavened, as it were, by this ferment, asava. Now, one of the most regular phrases that accompany the declaration of the attainment of emancipation is, having seen through wisdom, his cankers are made extinct. Panyaya chassa disva asava parikina honti.
Yeah.
Once the fermenting agent is thus destroyed, the concept in the strict sense of the term cannot occur in the emancipated mind, though he may think and speak with the help of worldly concepts. Since the cankers which agglutinate the concept are no more, the Arahant can render concepts non-manifest, anidassana, in his jhanic consciousness, which as much is as, to the use of relevant canonical simile, a man whose hands and feet are cut off reflects and knows that he has lost his limbs. Sandaka Sutta of Majjhima Nikaya. It may also be added that it is this fermenting agent which, in its dynamic manifestations as sankharas, is instrumental in graphically presenting before the consciousness of a dying individual that concept or percept which serves as a footing for his rebirth. The process of crystallization that follows is not essentially different from the process whereby an idea becomes an artifact in the hands of a craftsman due to grasping and molding. The traditional simile of the potter is not yet obsolete. His grasping and molding of the raw material is but the outward manifestation of his grasp on the concept of a pot. Once he loses his grasp on the latter, that is, once the concept loses its reality for him, he will automatically lose interest in the molding of that idea, and no pot will result. Similarly, when concepts have lost their fecundity for an individual, they will never fertilize or proliferate into any kind of rebirth. As we saw above, the consciousness of the Buddha and Arahants manifest nothing, anidassana, and is devoid of that dynamic ferment. Kina bija, visankarakatam chittam. Hence, it is that they pass away with a consciousness which is unestablished. Appatitta vijnana.
Appatittita
Appatittita vijnana. In other words, their consciousness comes to an end. Vijnanam atam agama.
No, vijnanam attang agama.
Vijnanam attang agama.
Yeah, one moment. Now, basically, there's a very interesting idea, teachings actually. Now, here, Venerable Jnananda refers one sutta called Godika Sutta, where one Venerable called Godika, so he actually passed away. Just before his passing away, he committed suicide. That's very interesting incident happened. So previously, actually, others tried to stop him, but he, just before passing away, he committed suicide. But anyway, he seems to be an arahant before the passing away. So this kind of a coincidence has happened. So, but the Mara was unaware that he is a arahant. So he was wandering here and there in search of where this Venerable Godika has reborn. You know that if someone passed away, he typically reborns, and he finds a rebirth. And this Mara, the Mara Divyaputta, so he wants to find out where this Venerable has got the rebirth. And he went here and there looking for such rebirth, such place, but he was unable to find it. And when Buddha knew that Venerable Godika passed away, so Buddha was arriving there with the other monks, and there Buddha showed this Mara's behavior to the other monks. Monks, have you seen that there's a kind of a dark cloud moving here and there? So that is monk, is the Mara, who is in search of the consciousness of Venerable Godika, where it has found its establishment, found its where he has got the rebirth. But monks, Venerable Godika passed away with unestablished consciousness. Appatittitena vijnanena Godiko parinibbuto. So this is how Buddha mentioned. So Venerable Godika has passed away with unestablished consciousness. So this is a interesting thing. Now probably there's a very common question asked by certain yogis. Now say when a vipassana yogi is practicing meditation, so they also come to a state where mind becomes completely empty and there are no thoughts, there are no signs, and fully blank, almost like undefiled. And so what happens if someone passes away like that? This is a very interesting and valid question. So are we going to die and never be born? So that means we attain arahatship. Oh, what happened to this? Now there's an interesting story where Venerable Sariputta and Venerable Ananda giving a final kind of sermon to Anathapindika. You know, Anathapindika was the foremost lay disciple of the Buddha, and he actually on his deathbed invited Venerable Sariputta and Venerable Ananda to come and see him. And at that moment, Venerable Sariputta gave him a very, deep Dhamma sermon, talking about again and again, keep his mind unestablished. So don't establish your consciousness on the sights, sounds, smells, tastes, tangibles, and the thoughts. And don't establish your consciousness on the eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, and internally stuck either. So keep it completely relaxed, completely open, completely unestablished. So this is very much like the essence of what Venerable Sariputta preached to Anathapindika. And Anathapindika was quite surprised by his teaching because he has never heard of such teaching. So typically such deep teachings were not recited to the lay people. So then actually this Anathapindika started crying. Then Venerable Ananda was little puzzled and he asked, don't worry, householder, you better think of something what you have done. You better be happy and you can remember what are the good deeds that you have done. You can establish your mind there or something like that. Such a kind of a answer that Venerable Ananda was giving to Anathapindika, not knowing why he is crying. And then Anathapindika was telling Bhante, I am crying because I have never heard such a deep teaching. I have associated the Buddha and the Sangha, but unfortunately I couldn't hear such a deep teaching so far. And then actually Venerable Sariputta was mentioning, so these kind of deep teachings are only taught to the monks, but not shared with the lay people. Then Anathapindika is actually inviting Venerable Sariputta, Bhante, don't think like that. There are householders who have some quick wit and they have some sharp understanding. So therefore, please preach us also this deep Dhamma. And like that, he invited Venerable Sariputta to teach him some deep Dhamma. So the point that I want to highlight here is that you know that Anathapindika was a Sotapanna noble person, a stream winner. Venerable Sariputta was teaching him and advising him to keep his mind completely empty during his death moment. And maybe we can trust, we can think with quite positivity, where Venerable so this household Anathapindika was able to hear what Venerable Sariputta has mentioned and was able to practice accordingly. And ultimately, during the deathbed, he was able to, as much as possible, keep his mind fairly unestablished. We can think like that. But as you know, he became a deity. He was born as a celestial being. Later, he came back and praised Venerable Sariputta while Buddha was preaching. So like that, some incident also has happened. Anathapindika Devaputta. So the idea is, so Buddha talks about establishing of consciousness due to three main reasons. One thing is the cetana, the intention. When we are conducting something intentionally, there the consciousness can be well established. So that is one area. The other thing is that one can have certain other different kinds of wandering thoughts. It is not that you are purposely thinking on a particular subject, but thoughts are still going on. You know, some random thoughts are going on and on. It is not something that you are purposely thinking. You are not intentionally thinking on a particular subject, but mind is not completely free from thinking. Mind is continuing with some thinking. So this is another situation which happens. Now, so this is called pakappana. Prakalpana in Sinhala, pakappana. Yancha bhikkave chetiti, yancha pakappeti. So these are the prakappana, where kind of ongoing thinking. Those are some background type of thinking. So this is another area where the consciousness can establish, according to this Chetana Sutta. Even if that is not present, that means the mind is fairly empty, no thinking. But still, anusaya is another factor that we need to consider. Yancha bhikkave cheteti, yancha pakappeti, yancha anusayati. Arammana metang hoti viññānassa titiya. When latent tendencies are there, still that is enough for the consciousness to establish. As far as I can understand, that is what has happened to Anathapindika. Even though Venerable Sariputta has given him the teaching, final teaching, but he was born as a deity, as a celestial being, still because he has certain amount of anusaya, latent tendencies. But on the other hand, with Venerable Godika, he became an arahant, and before passing away, and after passing away, he was actually during that time, he was able to maintain that unestablished consciousness, and he actually attained final Panibbāna. So these are some subtle points actually we can find out. So even though we are practicing emptiness, or we are trying to keep our mind unestablished, that is actually the training that we need to continue. But still, we may not be Arahant, since that we all have the taints, the asavas, anusaya, the latent tendencies. So that is where we need to work out complete abandoning of all these latent tendencies. And that is the area that we have to further practice.
In order the better to appreciate the above solution of the Buddha to the problem of suffering, we may briefly contrast it with the pre-Buddhistic attempts at release. These attempts, as a rule, were inspired by a false dichotomy between mind and matter. In search of a way out, they either pitted mind against matter, self-mortification, atta-kilamatanu yoga, or set matter against mind, self-indulgence, Kamasukallikana yoga. In the former case, the yogis found themselves in a spiritual cul-de-sac with the dilemma to be conscious or not to be conscious, and the most they could do was to develop the jhana of neither perception nor non-perception. In the latter case, it was simply a question of to be or not to be. The former could not extricate themselves out of even the most subtle jhanic experience possible at the worldly level, because they developed an attachment to it. And hence they found themselves reappearing in the formless realms, arupaloka. The latter, due to their materialistic disregard for all ethics in their gross indulgence, found themselves repeatedly shackled to lower realms of sensuality, kamaloka. The one lagged behind, obsessed with the concept of a metaphysical soul, whereas the other overreached himself owing to his narcissistic attachment to his body. In either case, whither they inclined, thither they fell, yet what they sought they did not find. The reason was that they were led by inclinations amassed through their bodily, verbal and mental preparations, kaya, vachi, mano sankara, in their ethical manifestations as the meritorious, the demeritorious, and the imperturbable, punya, apunya, anenjabi sankara, which their triple prapancha, they created their own worlds and found themselves thrown into them. When viewed against this background, we see that Buddha's solution to the problem of escape from the world of suffering was based on a restatement of the whole problem. His vision into the universal law of dependent arising, with its three corollaries of impermanence, suffering, and not self, exposed the fallacy of the rigid dichotomy between mind and matter.
Dichotomy. So rigid dichotomy between mind and matter. So here, dichotomy particularly mean that so we'll actually learn what it is. So basically, so the mind switch between yes and no, presence and absence, long, short, good, bad. So this kind of a dichotomy is where the mind is always jumping from one side to the other side. So this is the typical behavior of our mind. So that is actually explained in the what we call this Kacchanagotta Sutta, Dvenisito Koyang Kacchana Loko Yebuhien. So Buddha mentioned that to Venerable Kacchana, this world is particularly associating some sort of a dichotomy. Either yes, either no. Either things are present or either things are absent. Either things are good or things are bad. So likewise, the typical way of thinking is always some sort of partial or bias, and we need some sort of a yes-no answer, and that is how mind is jumping from one side to the other side. Okay.
He realized the conditioned phenomenal nature of the world, which necessitated a redefinition of the concept of the world. Thus, he declared that the terminology of the noble ones, Arya Savinaya, the world is indistinguishable from the concept thereof. that by which one is conscious of the world, by which one has conceit of the world. That is called world in the Noble One's discipline. As through what is one conscious of the world, through what has one conceit of the world, through the eye, friends, through the ear, the nose, the tongue, the body, and the mind. The end of the world wherein one is not born, does not grow, old or die, pass away, or reappear, that I declare is impossible to be known, seen, or reached by travelling. But, friend, I do not declare that one can make an end of suffering without reaching the end of the world. Friend, I do proclaim that in this very fathom-long body, with its perceptions and consciousness, is the world's arising, the world's cessation, and the path leading to the world's cessation.
This is actually one moment. This is a very strong statement made by the Buddha. Friend, I do proclaim that in this very fathom-long body, with its perceptions and consciousness, is the world's arising, the world's cessation, and the path leading to the world's cessation. So basically, in one sense, we can say that when we are practicing Satipatthana, we are using some sort of a part of this teaching. So you know that we start with the body. So this fathom-long body is our experimental ground. So we are keeping our attention on breathing, we are keeping our attention on rising and falling, and various element characteristics. So all are actually body related. And so this body is in that sense actually one sample of this whole physical realm. And we are using that to the best of our ability, to the maximum. And so basically, so by examining it, by experimenting with it, keeping it as a field of our experiment, so more and more we are able to understand this whole world. It is not only this body. We may have direct contact with the body. That is why for our experiment it is easy, and because we have direct access to it, and we allow it to behave as it like. But we are having the apparatus of the mindfulness and say clear comprehension, and we are keeping the mind even with proper say alignment or focus, and then we are able to understand the behavior of the body. So behavior of the body is actually later refined into the behavior of the elements. So the body comprises with elements, and this whole world comprises with elements, and actually we are dealing with a sample of elements. So ultimately, we are able to have a direct contact with the elements, and we are able to understand their behavior, their true nature. And later we understand, okay, so here also elements, they are manifesting like this, they are behaving like this. And outside is also elements. So there is no difference. Inferentially one will understand because there is no need of... So when we are dealing with this elements meditation, at first we are keeping our attention to the body, and from there we are able to understand the behavior of various elements. Ultimately, that understanding is not limited to the body. So one interesting statement by the Buddha and even Venerable Sariputta at various other suttas, Yacheva Kopana Ajjattika Patavidhatu, Yacha Bahira Patavidhatu, Patavidhatu Raivesa. So and he generalize it to the other elements as well. So we have done the experiment, we have done our insight practice using the body, but that insight, what we have grown, what we have gained, then we can extend to the whole world. So it is not limited to this body. So therefore, Buddha's teaching help us to use the body as an experiment, as a apparatus, as a tool to understand the real nature of this whole world. And through this understanding, then we are able to keep the mind completely free from this whole world, not only the body. And maybe later we can practice Vedana, the thoughts, everything. And then actually we are able to further enhance our understanding as well. Okay, Saman, we can further continue.
Yeah. The world, O Lord, they call it. In what sense, O Lord, there's a world or a concept of a world? Wherever, Samidhi, there is the eye, the visible forms, the visual consciousness, and things perceptible with the visual consciousness, there is the world for the concept of it, or the concept of it. Wherever there is the ear, nose, tongue, body, mind. Wherever, Samidhi, there is no eye, no visible forms, no visual consciousness, and nothing perceptible with the visual consciousness, there is neither a world nor a concept of a world. Wherever there is no ear, nose, tongue, body, mind. Thus, the world is what our senses present it to us to be. However, the world is not purely a projection of the mind in the sense of a thoroughgoing idealism. Only it is a phenomenon which the empirical consciousness cannot get behind, as it is itself committed to it. One might, of course, transcend the empirical consciousness and see the world objectively in the light of Panya, only to find that it is void, sunya, of the very characteristics which made it a world for oneself.
This is also a very interesting statement. Now, typically we all have our own world. So we had our childhood, and we are now maybe young or old. So we connect all with our past experiences, and then we can remember how we have spent our life. And now we have eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, and using which we are already open to the world. We can see, we can hear, we can smell, we can taste, we can touch. So basically we get that notion of a living being. We get the perception of living. I am living. So, and when I am living, so I have this world. In this world, I am a living being. So I am living in this world. So this kind of a perception is there. And for me, there is a world. And according to my own perceptions, according to my own judgments, I may decide, okay, what is good, what is bad, what is correct, what is wrong. And so eyes, the sight, sound, smells, taste, tangibles particularly give us some perception about this world. And so I am able to create my own world. So this is my world. So similarly, another person, according to his perceptions, according to his cultural upbringing, and all his conditioning, he prepares his own world. So likewise, we all have our own way of interpreting the world, perceiving the world, and this is how we typically live. But on the other hand, the teaching of the Buddha help us to, in a way, penetrate this sort of our personal understanding or personal perception about the world. And there may be a situation how we are able to keep the mind empty without having any kind of a thought of the world, having any kind of a thought about another world. So this is a very interesting area where, say, previously we have a lot of judgments about the world, a lot of perceptions about the world, and maybe incidents about the world, a lot of news about the world. So this is how we are living, this is how we perceive, and so this is how we become a worldly being. We have a lot of worldly perceptions, we have a lot of worldly thoughts, thinking. But there may be a situation through the vipassana, mind is very much like given up proliferation, has given up what we call conceiving, and was able to maintain a kind of a free mind, unattached mind, undefiled mind, untangled mind. So that mind is free. I am not telling that it is at its pristine form or a perfect form. One is maintaining it, but at least for a while, one may be able to maintain such a empty type of mind. Empty means that mind doesn't have a perception about the world, doesn't have a thought, doesn't have a stain or a sanya, a kind of a mark, a sign, and doesn't have a strong kind of intention. Mind has almost stopped thinking, but still living, still having some sort of a perception about one's life. So this kind of a very primordial, very primary kind of perception is there. But other than that, there is no gross worldly kind of perception. Now, this is actually highlighted in one verse in the Kalahavivada Sutta, na sanya sanyi. That means with respect to this world, so typically we have all different kinds of sanya, different kinds of perceptions about sights, sounds, smells, tastes, tangibles, and our own mind-made perceptions, our own judgments, our own prejudices. So many things are there. But when someone is properly practicing vipassana, where the mind is unestablished, when the mind is unestablished, he doesn't have all those mundane type of perceptions, mundane type of sanya. So this is something possible. So Buddha confirms that. So through the practice, one can have such kind of a refined state of mind. So gradual abandoning of perceptions is possible. As stated in the Pottapada Sutta, the training is there for that. One can train one's mind to abandon some gross perceptions and to achieve more refined perception. So while being there, you're probably able to attain even refined perception, abandoning even that subtle perception. So likewise, a gradual refinement of the mind is possible through the practice. So if one is able to continue one's practice, particularly in the non-self, anatta, then one may understand, okay, this whole world is empty of a self or what belongs to a self. Sunyamidang attenava attaniyenava. So there is no self here and there is no anything belong to a self. There is no any eternal self. There is no any lasting or permanent self. This world is empty of such a self. This world is empty of what belongs to a self. So likewise, one may attain the what we call sunyata, the emptiness, with a deep understanding of the not self. So as Katuvana Thero highlights here, so Buddha's teaching help us to maybe arrive that, understand that, and as he mentioned earlier, to understand the Patisampada, how things are happening dependently. And similarly, one may have such understanding after going through the understanding of impermanence, suffering, and non-self. And these are the areas actually we have to work on, and we have to thorough in our practice so that our wisdom is growing. Panyang nappamajjayi. So Buddha advises us not to be negligent in developing this kind of a wisdom. It also will take some time, but don't ignore that. So you need to invest some time to develop such insight, develop that wisdom. You got to do it quickly, or you need to do it quickly because some more to do. It is not the end either. Panyanappamanjaya. So without a delay, without being heedless, you need to develop such wisdom. So that's why the vipassana is particularly important, which help us to have this insight, maybe about all different kinds of conditioned phenomena. You are able to have that insight. So when such insight is available, so your perception about the world become different. Previously, the way you have looked at the world and how now you are looking at the world after going through vipassana practice may be quite different. Your perception has completely changed. Previously, you have a perception of a person, an individual, as even some may have a perception about a soul, and outside also there are individuals and objects. But later, at least while you are meditating, probably you may understand it is empty of such a self, empty of what belongs to a self. At least during that sitting, or at least during that insight practice, you are able to have that understanding, that insight, that perception available to you. So likewise, the Vipassana practice is helping us to look at the whole world from a different angle, rather than simply believing of what we are thinking or what we are perceiving. So typically, as mentioned by Katakunda Thero, so we have the perception about the world simply because of our way of seeing it through our naked eye, the way we hear our sounds, smells, tastes, tangibles, etc. So that is how we prepare our own world. But that is being penetrated by the Vipassana practice. Okay, I think this is a point to stop here, and we may continue from there after maybe next week. And now I like to open the session for questions.
Sorry, Bande, we have 4 questions today.
Right.
Question number 1. This is on Dhammasaman. Dear Bante, thank you for the great explanation last time about the interdependency of Nama Rupa and Vijnana, where they create kind of a vortex due to the interdependency. How do we link Sankara and Avijja to this explanation, Bante? Much merits for your insights. With Metta,
thank you for that question. That's a very interesting and valid question. So we can see here not understanding this interlink, not understanding this interplay, this interdependency is actually the avijja. So I am talking from the view of Katakunda Thero. So it is not that Buddha forgot to mention avijja and sankhara. Rather, so we don't understand this interlink. We don't understand this vortex of consciousness and name and form. That's why we are simply being captivated by this whole motion. They are interdependent and they are always in a whirlpool, and we being captivated by that, are simply driven by that. We don't understand this kind of process is going on in our mind. So for us, this Nama Rupa, the name and form, has become something very real, something very important, and we simply being carried away by that, taken that as the truth. So that is our ignorance. But when we are slowly understanding that, our mind becomes more clear. Time to time, at least, it stops thinking, so that it becomes more and more clear. And maybe at certain times, it becomes even clear by free from even the perceptions, even the signs, and what kind of such stains, impediments. So that mind becomes extremely pure, extremely clear. On such case, we can see that momentum of consciousness and name and form has fairly stopped. Now there is no name and form on the consciousness. So the now consciousness, we can say, unestablished. Consciousness is unmanifested. It doesn't have any place to manifest because it is now completely clean. So this is a kind of an understanding. It is the vijja. Instead of avijja, now we have vijja, the knowledge. Previously what we have is the ignorance. That ignorance is actually causing that name and form to fabricate. As today also Katakunda Thero mentioned during our discussion what we have taken. So he has taken the simile of clay, that old simile. Say when you are given a lump of clay to your hand, to that potter, so he has some sort of an idea about a pot. Say he wants to prepare a flower vase. What he has currently on his hand is a lump of clay. Since he has a vision of a flower vase, now he can mold it. He can prepare it. He can construct a pot, a flower vase. So that is in his mind. That's a conceptual idea that he has in his mind. So what he has then ultimately turned into a flower pot. So that is the fabrication process we all do in our mind. So whenever the mind get a symptom, a sign, a mark of the name and form, we can't simply let it go. We can't simply slip it away. Instead, we do the fabrication because of the ignorance. So ignorance is telling us, okay, this is important, this is very beautiful, this is something ugly, this is very bad, or this is very good. So like that, we are inserting our own judgments into those, say, mental fabrications, or rather we can say mental images, name and form, nama rupa. Accordingly, we do the fabrication. So ignorance causes fabrication to happen, and that fabrication further helps to name and form and consciousness to develop their interdependence, and it improves their momentum. Ultimately, it carries on to develop a hurry momentum, and now we can't stop. Now I want to get up, I want to go towards the fridge, I want to open the fridge, now I have to find out the very delicious ice cream. So likewise, now I am acting based on the sixth sense basis, and now I am trapped in the typical dependently arisen nature of the process, we can say. So likewise, the ignorance is there. It is, even though we haven't particularly mentioned here, ignorance and the fabrications are there because we don't understand this interdependency between name and form and the consciousness.
Thank you, Bhante. Question number 2 of 4. This is a general question. Dear Venerable Sir, I try to maintain mindfulness during day-to-day activities as much as possible, and I watch my mind. When I get a negative thought, example, irritating or frustrated feeling or any anger, I find that there is some other context behind it all the time, such as something or someone is not as per my liking, and the attachment to the liking is the cause of the problem. However, this is kind of an intuition rather than a direct knowledge. My direct knowing is the negative thought and the irritation and the liking to something I have constructed in the background. Can these type of intuition and inquisitive checking be considered as yoniso manasikara? Please advise what is the next step of watching the mind. Much merits for your service with metta. That's the end of the question.
Yeah, I actually like to agree with you. So this is the insight actually. So this insight is against the typical old perception. So the old perception has created certain sankhara. It has created certain tendency. It wants to be angry with that person. It wants to unhappy about that person. That unhappiness is now already there because the old perception has taken place. But now you have a choice because of the practice. Now you have actually another position to look at it, another way to look at it. Rather than being a poor victim of that old perception, now you have the capacity to look at that as a perception. Oh, this is a wrong perception. This is a wrong judgment. This is a new understanding we have, a new knowledge. So your way of looking at things has now changed. Therefore, it's an insight. So therefore, it is quite correct to mention like that. It's a kind of, as you said, it's a kind of an intuitive awareness. As sometimes this Ajahn Sumedho mentioned, it's an intuitive awareness. It is not that you are gaining through your old book or your kind of learned information. Rather, the practice has quickly given a quick understanding of this, something like this. So mind has taken a wrong step. Mind has gone into a old habit. It has gone into a wrong track. But you are still not fully governed by that, or you are not yet a victim of that process. But now mind has initiated that, by the way. Now you anyway have a chance to give it up. Rather than trapped in it, you are able to now give it up. Yeah.
Question number 3 of 5 is a Dhammasaman question again. Dear Bhante, regarding last week's explanation on Anidassana Vijnana, is it right to take this kind of mind state does not have a lobha dvesha and moha? If it is free entirely from moha or ignorance, then does that mean it is an enlightened mind state? With metta, that's the end of the question.
Yeah, we can say so. We can say it is an enlightened mind state. But the problem is we can't maintain it to the best. That's the problem. So we may have it for a while, but again it gets defiled. The difference between the Arahant and we, or the Yogis, is that the Arahants have perfected it. So the Arahants have it perfectly. Even though they go through some utter severe kind of a pain, still they are able to maintain that. Even though they go to an extreme situation, still their mind is having that anidasana state. Think like of a kind of a water bottle. Say a particular water bottle that you have certain mud in it. So once it is kind of changed, once you want to move it, so it's become fully muddy. And assume that you leave it to settle for even a day. Now all the little particles segmented, sedimented on the ground, and now the water has become very clear. Now we can say nothing is there, it's quite transparent, it's pure water, but unfortunately the latent tendencies are there. That sedimentation is still there. So even now, unfortunately, if it's again shaked, then what happened again, those sedimentations come out, again the water bottle become opaque because it still has that impurities. But now think of a typical water bottle, that what we are drinking. Even though it is shaken, no issue at all, because it is still pure. It doesn't have such sedimentation. It doesn't have any impurities. It's pure water. And even if you shake it, no issue. So Arahant's mind is like that.
Question number 4 of 5, this is a Dhammasaman question. Dear Bhante, today's reference of Godika Sutta, I understood this as not belonging to the unwholesome act of taking your own life or suicide, Bhante. Is there some instance that suicide is justifiable? Much merits for your explanation.
It may be justifiable only to an Arahant. Because you know that, so for us what happened is, we still have a sense of I. So with such sense of I, you are killing this body. So that cause certain bad karma, and anyway you will be reborn. But the Arahant, for him there is no sense of I at all. Even if he commits suicide, there is no rebirth at all. So this is his last life. Nothing to worry. So such instances are there. You know that not only Venerable Godika, there's a very interesting story of Dabbamalla Putta. So Venerable Dabbamalla is actually very eminent monk, eminent Arahant, who has the ability to attain Tejo Kasina, and he's the one actually showing or allocating the kutis to the monks, and he used to use his fingertip to have Tejo Kasina. He has used it like a torch as a flashlight to show the path to the other monks. It's a very interesting story. Now, you know how he passed away. So when he wanted to pass away, he came in front of the Buddha, pay his respects, and went to the sky, and he did a lot of, some sort of psychic, visualizations, kind of showed his psychic powers, and then ultimately burned his body without a trace. That is how he passed away. Because he has come to the end of the life, and he simply burned the body without even a trace. Because he is an Arahant. So for the Arahants, therefore, the way we interpret and the way that they are interpreting it is quite different. For the Arahants, there is no person, there is no individual, because that has completely penetrated by them.
Question number
Back to you,
5.
Tamil.
Yes.
Yeah.
Question number 5 of 5 is the last question. It's a Dhamma sermon question. Dear Vante, would practicing up to 8 jhana help in understanding neither perception nor perception, or establishing a consciousness with metta? That's the end of the question.
Actually, it's a difficult task because practicing even a jhana is not an easy task nowadays, and particularly as a layman, you to practice jhana also very, very difficult. You need to practice a lot, practice samatha meditation a lot, and then only you are able to attain jhana. And after fairly mastering the first jhana, then only you better practice second jhana. After mastering second jhana, then only you better practice third jhana. So likewise, you have to progressively attain the arupa jhana. So coming to all 8 jhana as a layperson is a big challenge. So therefore, I don't like to recommend that practice to the lay people. And even for monks, it is not easy. But the Satipatthana practice is something possible, workable, doable to anyone. And later, anyway, it is helping us to, at least to some extent, achieve that unestablished state of consciousness. I am not telling it to the perfect amount of as an arahant, but at least taste of it may be able to experience after practicing vipassana.
Thank you, Bhante. So that we have come to the end of the written questions. We have about 5 minutes. Do you want to open for any questions, or we would close?
Yeah, no problem. Yeah.
So if anyone has any questions you want to directly ask from Bhante, you can raise your hand. We have about 5 minutes, so probably take one question.
Yeah, actually, most probably next week I won't be able to conduct the session because there's this Chitta Vivekashrama retreat is there on 15th. So anyway, I'll inform Suranga whether I'm available or not.
Yep, we can do a practice on this session.
Yeah.
Yes, someone has raised a hand. Yes. You can ask the question.
Thank you. Thank you, Bhante. Just on that last question, would the Arahants, would they have attained the 8 jhanas?
That's interesting. So it is not a must either. So that's why 2 types of arahants are mentioned in the Dhamma. One category is called Upato Bhaga Vimutta. The other category is called Panya Vimutta. The Upato Bhaga Vimutta arahants, actually they have the skill on both sides. They have the skill in the wisdom side as well as of the samatha side. That means they have the 8 jhana and they have mastered it, and they are able to attain the jhana, they are able to enjoy it. At the same time, they are completely free from the asavas. All the defilements are abandoned. Now, these are the pristine form of the arahantship. But there seems to be a majority of other arahants who are panya vimutta. They don't have any psychic powers, they don't have any pubbe nivasanussati jnana, they don't have arupa jhana. But still they have completely abandoned the asavas, completely abandoned all the defilements. They are called the panya vimutta. You can refer Susima Sutta, where Venerable Susima ordained in order to learn Dhamma and later disrobe and then preach that also, and then he's actually a paribrajaka. But later he went through a situation where the certain arahants come and inform the Buddha that I am an arahant. Now he quickly attended to that arahant. He approached that arahant and he's asking, Bhante, do you have psychic powers? Do you have arupa jhana? Are you able to quickly attain arupa jhana? So those arahants saying, no, I don't. So are you really an arahant then? Can you proclaim that you are as an arahant? Can you claim yourself as an arahant? So that's a question he's asking. And then that arahant is actually saying, either you understand it or not, Susima. So we are Panya Muttu. We actually liberated through wisdom. So he actually approached several arahants and he got the same answer. Then he approached the Buddha and he complained, Bhante, I was thinking that the all arahants should have all these kind of psychic powers, all these extraordinary abilities. But these people are saying they don't have any of those, but still they claim they are arahants. Then Buddha started preaching Dhamma to Venerable Susima. Susima also fully liberated, being a Panya Vimutta Arahant. It's a very, very interesting story. So he himself has become an example of that category. So that is, therefore, we need to understand the Arahants are different types, 2 different types particularly are available. Seems to be the majority are Panya Vimutta.
Thank you, Bhante. There's some hope for us then. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for the question. So I think we just come out on time, so we can close the program today. So to end the program for today, I would first like to thank Bhante for his valuable time, even with the busy schedule at the monastery. To all the supporters of this program, both seen and unseen, and to all the participants for joining today to practice and share their questions. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Thero Saranai.
Yeah, Thero Saranai.
Thero Saranai.